Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Sade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. And today I have Andrea Giles here with me on Zoom, and she is part of the Remarriage Club series. She's going to tell us her dating after divorce story. It's got a lot of twists and turns. I can't wait to share this with you. Andrea, welcome. Please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and just a little bit about your family.
All right. Thank you so much, Sade. It's an honor to be here. Yes, I'm Andrea Giles. I love the work that you're doing here, and I'm happy to be here to talk about this important subject. So I'm a coach. I coach women around infidelity within their marriages. I help them get clear about if they're staying or going and help them move forward with their lives. So that's what I do career-wise. Family-wise, I have a huge family, very big family. I have 6 biological children, 5 bonus children, and we've had a big surprise number 12 in the oven. Huge surprise.
And number 12 is coming how many years after you remarried?
12 years. Not after I remarried, sorry. 12 years after the last kid. 5 years after remarriage, but the next kid up they're twins and they're 12.
Oh my God.
But yeah, we've been married for 5 years and had decided that we were not going to have children and, did things to ensure that. And what do we know? Here we are. So having a baby in December.
It was just meant to be.
I guess so. Yes, I guess so.
That's wonderful. So really you have every, I guess, stage or every area of remarriage to talk about. So you have the blended family, probably every scenario in a blended family to talk about. Yes. The infidelity, divorce, dating after divorce, all of it.
Yep. Lots of things to talk about for sure.
All right. So my first question to you is, you experienced infidelity in your first marriage?
Yes, I did. Yep.
How did that impact how you thought about dating after the divorce?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, with infidelity, it was a big breach of trust, right? And you think that things are one way, and then you find out one day that they're not, and that the person that you're married to is not what you thought, that they have different things going on than what you thought. And so that the biggest breach of trust there is that it made me wonder about myself. And can I trust myself? How did I not know? Because we were married for 16 years and there were things going on throughout the entire marriage that I did not know about. Just didn't even know. And every once in a while I would catch a clue or something and go talk to him about it. And he was really good at lying, frankly. And I just believed him because I'm a kind of a general, just a pretty trusting person by nature. So when that all happened, it really shook my belief in myself, honestly, Sade. It really shook what I thought about the world and how I thought things were. I kind of thought that, you grow up, you check the boxes, you do these things, you show up as a wife in this way, I tried to be a loving, supportive wife, and it just was not what I thought it would be. And so for me, it shook my trust for sure going forward. It shook my trust in my own ability to discern and to really see things, right? It was just very confusing to me. And it also shook my faith in for future relationships, honestly. Yeah. It made me wonder, if I didn't know this was going on right under my nose, how can I be sure it's not going to happen again?
Right. So how did you resolve that? I mean, I'm just what? I want to know, because that denial, I think sometimes when a woman divorces, or a lot of us have the story of the red flags that we didn't see.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's unfair. In my case, there were red flags, but then when I look back at it, it's like, well, I didn't have the information to know that those were red flags.
Yeah.
So I can't really beat myself up
Yes.
for not seeing the red flags. And then for some people, there were no red flags.
Right. Yes. For me, there were things that for sure felt off to me that I was like, and you know what? There were things too, like you said, that I didn't know were red flags. I didn't know. I'd never been married before, right? I got married young. That was my only experience. And so I was pretty good at just looking forward and giving the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, he must be having an off day. Like if he was exhibiting behaviors or whatever, I just kind of swept it away. Like, it's fine. And then there were some bigger things that presented themselves. And again, I always have been about trying to get to the root of things, like what's going on? Why are these things happening? And just to give the brief little, cap of what happened is I ended up filing for divorce because in the end, he was not interested in being honest with me. He wasn't interested in really fully engaging in our marriage. And it was very much affecting myself and my children. And so I ultimately decided to end the marriage. And then 7 months after the divorce finalized, he got into a car accident and he passed away. He was 39 years old. My kids were 15 and under. And back to your question with the red flags, right? So in hindsight, I think you are correct, completely correct, that there's some things that we don't even know are red flags, right? Like, how are we supposed to know, right? So it can get a little bit confusing. So you asked, how did I resolve it? Want me to dive into that a little bit?
Well, yeah, and then we'll circle back to the grief, because obviously you was probably still grieving your divorce when the car accident happened.
Oh, it was really rough. It was rough. Yeah, it was. I'll just touch on that real quick. I still felt like I was getting my feet back under me of just kind of trying to put my life back together because my identity was so wrapped up in being a married woman, being a wife, being a mother, all those things. And it just took a while for my brain to catch up that I was no longer married. I was single, kind of trying to reacclimate to this new life, right? Or acclimate to it. And so when he died, it was very sudden. He was just gone. He died instantly. And just like that, once again, like everything that I thought was just changed in an instant. And this time it was a different kind of grief. The first time around, I felt like, I really cared about him. And to this day, I still do, right? I still consider him my friend and I care about him. And I felt like I was losing him twice. That's what it felt like. The first time around, I felt a lot of loss because I cared about him and he just was not willing. He wasn't willing to set down the behaviors that he was involved in and get the help he needed. He just wasn't willing. And so I felt like I was losing him in a sense then. And then for him to die, it was just a whole different loss, right? And then helping my children navigate the loss of their father. And so for sure, it took me back. It took me, honestly, it took me into a place of the questions that you ask of, could I have done more? Could I have, because his death he was being destructive. He was not being responsible. And so kind of questioning myself and do I have a part to play here? Is there any responsibility here that was mine? So those are things that I needed to clean up for myself. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you go to therapy? How, I can imagine you must have.
I did.
to actually come out on the other side.
Yep, I did. I went to lots of therapy, lots of therapy. So I went to therapy at the time. I didn't know anything about coaching. I went to therapy and worked through, I did some grief work. I did just really understanding kind of some of the behaviors that he was in. It was so helpful to see from like a textbook, like to be able to kind of read from like a textbook experience, some of the choices he made, and that it was actually way more common than what I thought. and then how it affects the people closest to that person. It kind of normalized it for me. Like, I'm not a crazy person. There's nothing wrong with me. My responses are totally normal. And then ultimately getting to a place where I could trust, like just trusting that I could let go, that I could wish him well, let it go, and move forward with my life. And I recognize that for me to fully step into where I was going, that was necessary, right? That I needed to do that untangling of letting, setting down the things that were not mine to carry, which can be tricky, right? It can be tricky. Yeah.
What did life feel like, I guess we could say that year of the divorce and then his death? And then when you came out, or you felt like you came out on the other side emotionally, what was the differences in those two periods?
I think the first time, like with the divorce, I felt it was really, really hard, but I felt very, I don't know if determined is the word. I knew that it was important. And I knew that, so part of my situation is that there were some mental illness pieces where that were untreated, and that he was not getting the help he needed for. And so it put myself and my children in some situations that were not safe. And so for me, I was kind of like, kicking in like the mama bear, like I have to do this. I have to move forward. And so I found a lot of strength in myself to carry on, to get things done, to get things in place to where I felt like my children were safe. I was safe, things like that. And so I felt a lot of, there was grief there was a lot of sorrow. There was all the disbelief, kind of like, how is this my life? Yeah. That came up a lot. Like, how is this my life? How is this real? Right. Yeah. But I also had a lot of deep determination. Like, I have to get through this. I have to get to the other side of this. When he died, that was different. It was different. It was just straight up grief. It was just a lot of loss, a lot of grief, just sadness that this person that I cared about, who had just crazy potential. He was really, really smart, really ambitious. Like, he was a lawyer working, for a big name. Like, he was doing good things career-wise, professionally. And it just was really sad that he had made some of the choices that he made that led to this current circumstance, right? And so it was just a lot of grief. And Sade, I'll say too, for some of your listeners, that, because I imagine probably everyone listening has experienced this to one extent or another, all the opinions of other people and them chiming in. And that was sometimes really hard, because I had people telling me that I should be happy and that I should be, look, you don't have to deal with this anymore. And you should, telling me how I should feel. And it made it worse. It was hard, I want to be sad. Like, this is the person I was married to for 16 years, the father of my children. I want to be sad that he's gone. Yeah. And so learning to let other people have their thoughts and opinions, and then owning what was mine. Right. So moving forward from that, was really coming to a place of acceptance that it was okay for me to feel what I was feeling, and that it was okay for me to move forward and really build a new life.
Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to shadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode. Right. And so how long after he passed away or the divorce did you decide to date again?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I had been on my own, single mom for a year, and it was my children that were like, Mom, you have to try to date. You have to just try. I'm like, oh, dread. And so I thought, okay, I'll put a profile up on a, dating site. It was like a Christian dating site thing, thinking it was kind of a funny like joke. Like, and it felt very safe. Like I could just hide behind my computer.
Right. And that's interesting because some people feel the dating sites are totally unsafe.
Oh, okay.
And then you have other people who feel like, no, it's meeting up with people in person that's unsafe. And I tell everyone, it's totally how you think about it. It's literally the thoughts that you choose about either one that matter.
It's true. But for me, I had the thoughts of, this is fine. I can just, meet people and hide out behind my computer. I don't have to actually like go meet anybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I thought it would be kind of fun, right? Just it could be fun. So that was a year after we had separated, and our divorce had finalized 4 or 5 months before. Okay. Been on my own for a year. And funny how these things go. I put that profile up, and within 24 hours, the man I'm now married to had written to me.
Did you ever worry that, oh, wow, I have 6 kids. No one's going to want me.
Oh, yes.
Kids.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So at that point, had you resolved that, or were you still like, well, no one's going to want me with 6 kids?
No, I hadn't resolved it, if I'm honest. That's partly why it was kind of a game in my head, is I'm like, once they know, like, and at that time, so the timing was that I put a profile up. I remember it was in April of 2014, April. Okay. Put a profile up and just started talking to lots of different people. But like I said, my first husband had written to me. And so in my mind, he hadn't passed away yet, and I was divorced, and I was still dealing with all of the, the custody stuff and all of those things. And I'm like, oh, nobody is going to want to take this all on. 6 kids is a lot. And of course I was totally in it. Like at that time I had full custody. So I was with them all the time, and they were 15 and under. It was crazy, right?
How old was the youngest at the time?
The youngest were my twins, and they turned 5 in April that year. So,
pretty little.
Yeah. So I had like, a lot going on in my household. I'm like, I don't know if anybody would be crazy enough to take this all on. Right. But I thought, that's kind of why it felt safe to me, honestly, is because I'm like, nobody would want to be serious. Right. So I can just chat with people and have fun. Well, I started chatting with this guy, and he had 5 of his own children. His wife was a widower, or he was a widower. His wife had passed away from cancer. And we became friends pretty quickly, and just had stuff to talk about. We just became friends. And, Sade, part of what was kind of healing for me actually is that a lot of people were interested. Like a lot of people, I told them, I told them straight up, I'm not going to hide my kids. Right.
Yeah.
Like I have 6 kids. This is how old they are. And there are a lot of really good men out there. That's what I learned. Wow. There's a lot of really good men. A lot of people who are seeking, solid relationships, and are wanting to give give their best. And I met some really neat people through that process. And so that helped me. It helped me just to like challenge my own thoughts. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe there are people who would welcome it, who would welcome my kids and love them and be good to them. And then, of course, it was just a couple of months later that he died. He died in July. So it was just like, 3-4 months later. And then my story changed, right? He was no longer in the picture. And, even though for me, that time was really, really hard, it did change the scene for me as far as like what I was able to do moving forward, like being able to move out of state, being able to, it was just me
made
and the
it
kids.
Easier to date.
Yes.
Like, okay. Was your now husband out of state or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was in Montana. And I was in the Bay Area, California.
Oh.
So yes, he was out of state. Yes.
So tell us how did you, you said it was very healing for you to like meet a lot of different people who were willing to, be in relationship with you, even though you had 6 kids.
Yeah.
How did you resolve that? Oh, not everyone is going to cheat on me the way my ex did.
Right. So first of all, I guess what I learned is that people didn't run, right? When I told them that I had 6 kids, that they were still interested, still wanting to know me, still asking questions, interested in my children, things like that. And so for me, for the piece of learning to trust, it's been a process. A process. And I'll say this, I would be lying if I said that it was just all resolved before I got remarried. I would be lying. I think that one of the beautiful parts about trusting ourselves to step into new relationships is that we're trusting that it will potentially bring things to the surface that need to be worked through. And for me, it would have been easier in many ways to stay alone because I didn't have to deal with some of those things, didn't have to face them head on. But it was through the dating process and through remarriage that those things had to be reckoned with, or I'd make myself crazy trying. Right.
Right. There's so much growth. Like really, I mean,
yes.
And this is where there's like productive work in relationships and then just the hard work that goes nowhere and you're just kind of killing yourself. But the good hard work is you come up against this other person and they show you a part of yourself you didn't know existed. And then you have to decide, is this who I want to be?
Yes.
Or do I want to work through this part of my programming or this part of my thoughts to become the person that I really want to be?
Yep, absolutely. So it definitely showed me. And what was interesting about it is that I was dating a widower, right? It was not a divorce situation. She had passed away. And it brought up so much stuff. Like to where I felt some of the same feelings of jealousy and to be clear, without, giving too much detail, my first husband, it was not infidelity where there was like one person. It was a lot of things. Okay. Yeah. A lot of things. It was not an emotional attachment. It was not one person. It was a lot of different things. Anyway. And yeah, I'll leave it there, but it had the same kind of effect of like totally messing with my thoughts about myself, my thoughts about, trusting somebody. Right. And so with my new, or when I was dating my now husband, I just felt it in my brain. It felt like there was this other woman that was always going to be there. And because she passed away, because we as a society tend to really, prop up people who have passed away and say the best flowery things about them.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And it really showed me so clearly the thoughts about myself that were less than flattering.
Right.
And
So
so, yeah, go ahead.
did it seem like, it sounds like you were insecure,
Yeah, I
like
was.
comparing yourself to her memory?
Yeah, totally. Totally. And, his kids would tell me things, different people, like once we started dating more and I got to know some of the people that he knew, things like that, would tell me things about her. And it was just like this tough, like, can I do this? Can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
Can I do this? And then the other piece that I'm just going to be honest about is that our dating was not smooth sailing. It was not like the meet the person, fall in love, just be so over the moon about each other, get married. It was kind of rocky because I think for him, she had been sick for almost 7 years. So quite a while, almost half of their marriage. And I think in his mind, he thought that he was more prepared than he was. He thought that he was more ready. And just like we were talking about before, there's nothing like dating to show us the areas we need to grow, right? To go, oh, that needs to be looked at, right?
Yeah.
And so he had a lot of work to do. We both did. We both had a lot of things that came to the surface that I don't think we would have even known had we stayed back and just kind of stayed in our own little bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was tough because as I was in this space of learning to, really stand on my own feet, learning how to validate myself, I was still in a place of looking for his validation, right? Looking for his assurance and things like that. And he emotionally was working through a lot of grief that he didn't even know was there. And so he wasn't always in a position to just give me what I thought that I needed, right?
Yeah, that attention, like that full attention.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you were long distance doing all of this. So either way, still would feel different.
Yes, it was all long distance. And we saw each other, as often as we could. We talked all the time, but we had lots going on our home fronts, right? So we couldn't just go see each other all the time. But over time, our trust in each other grew. Our trust that these things would that we can handle it, right? Like we had lots of messy conversations, lots of them, messy conversations where I tried to articulate my feelings, my fears, things like that, and where he expressed his. And we both came from such different situations, right? We came from different kinds of emotional pain, right? And so we had different things to work through. And so we did have some hard conversations of, is this something we can do, right? Can we do this? Can we build a life, And I'll say too, like early on with him, there was this level of comfort of like this feeling of meeting this friend that, I remember when I first started talking to him and when I first started talking to his kids, it was like, oh, there you are. That's what it felt like. Like,
it's very familiar. Yeah.
It was like, there they are. It felt very familiar. But over time, if the things that we needed to work on became more and more evident, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
how did you handle those conversations? Because I think a lot of my listeners have trouble staying in those conversations. Well, actually, I wouldn't even say staying, even initiating or the thought. Like I was talking to a client recently, and the thought of bringing up STDs in a dating situation completely freaked her out and almost became a barrier to her even starting to date.
Yes.
Because she knew at some point she was going to have that conversation. And I was like, at some point in adulthood, we have to be comfortable articulating what we're thinking, holding space for that discomfort, knowing that the best thing for you is to bring up whatever is on your mind and stay in the conversation and observe the other person and their ability to stay in that conversation. Because if you ask a guy about STDs and potentially getting tested, and his response in that moment tells you a lot about who he is.
Yep. Absolutely. I think, yes, for sure. So I think a couple of things here. First of all, I would say to your listeners, it's okay to be messy. It's okay to stumble. It's okay to, go into it thinking, this is how I'm going to say it. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to hold on to myself and my emotions, keep grounded in myself. And it's okay to sometimes get it wrong, right? It's okay to be messy. And I still think that just showing up in that conversation is so powerful. Just being willing to have the conversation, you're going to be better for it, even if it's messy, even if it doesn't just roll off the tongue as easily as you rehearsed,
Yes.
right? Because we're still allowed to be human, and we're still allowed to have emotions, and we can plan it all out and still have things not quite go the way we hoped. But what I will say is that how to step into those conversations is, and for me, how I did looking back is that I had things that I wanted. I had these things that I wanted out of a relationship, and knew that I needed to see those things for me to feel comfortable moving forward. And it's funny you mentioned STDs, because that's a question he asked me, right? Like, he needed to know, of course,
Yeah.
he knew my background with the marriage I was in and things like that. And I needed to, that was something he wanted to know. And I had plenty of questions for him. Right. And so I think that if you can scan out a little bit to what it is you actually are wanting, and seeing it almost like you're collecting data, like,
yes,
these are like data points. You're just collecting new data points. You're like, this is where I'm going. This is what I want. This is the end thing that I want. And I'm just getting data points along the way to see if this is like, does it add up? Right?
100%.
Does it add up? But I will say the part that we avoid is that to receive these data points that we're looking for, we have to give them. We have to be willing to show our cards. We have to be willing to show, to speak and to share how we feel and to allow people to respond to it. And it will tell you so much about the other person, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's so good. Those conversations are, I think they're everything. They're everything. That discomfort, being willing to I'm just going to be here. And if it works out, that's fine. If it doesn't, but approaching it like I'm an adult now, like this is put your big girl panties on.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of scenario. How did you know? And you said he had asked you some questions too that were hard. How did you know he was showing up in a way that he was going to be willing to do the work? He was willing to be honest. What was it about him? And because I think a lot of my listeners are not familiar with that kind of guy who shows up, who does the work, who's open and transparent. Was one of my current husband's transparency was one of the things that really drew me to him. Like his life was an open book. And I was just like, that is so different in a guy.
Yep. So for me, out the gate, I remember pretty early on in our dating, he told me things. He told me things about his life. He told me mistakes he had made, things he regretted, issues that they had, or areas where he felt like he could have done better. And, just some of those pain points that he was carrying around, or things that he wished that he had done better. He never came into it with this, like, I knocked it out of the park. It was, it was just so great. Like and there were the things he told me would have been, there were hard things to tell me, right? There were things that I could have formed judgments about, and he knew that. But his thing was, I am going to be completely transparent with you about, where I come from and some of the struggles that I've had. And to me, that, I'm like, I think he's safe. I think he's safe. He's not trying to hide. He's putting these things out there, and he's letting me decide what I want to think about it. Right.
I love that.
Instead of trying to control or manipulate how I think about something. He's like, here's this piece of information, do with it what you will, but I want you to know this thing, right?
Yeah. Wow. I love that. That's so good. Safe, open,
Yeah.
honest, transparent, more so than like you said, you didn't have the fireworks at the beginning, that hot and
Mhm.
heavy because you were long
Yeah.
distance,
Yeah.
but you had the meat and potatoes of a real relationship.
Right.
It was healthy.
Yes. Yeah.
So at what point did you turn from, hey, we're just friends talking long
Mhm.
distance because we have families that are similar, to like, hey, let's do this thing?
Right. So, at the early on, we both knew that there's attraction there. We both knew that there was potential, right? We both could see that. I would say it wasn't until, we dated for a couple years before we decided to get married. And we talked a lot about the possibility in the future. We talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, again, I'm going to be fully transparent here with your audience. Okay. So I got to the point, I'm just going to lay this out there, where I felt like, dude, you got to like decide what you're doing, because it was long distance and I had all of these kids. And I felt like for him, he was just one of his kind of trauma responses, if you will, is that it was really scary for him to think of recommitting and then having something happen, just like it was scary for me, right? Different, coming
Yeah.
from different places, but similar fears. And so we would get closer and then pull back a little bit, closer, pull back. And I got to the point where I had done so much work on myself, where I had worked a lot on really understanding my own value and understanding that some of those responses from him were not about me at all, that they were him still needing to just sort through some things, right? Work through some things. And so I took a step back and I just said, you know what? I need some space from this. I need to step back and just kind of live my life and we cared very much about each other. I remember that conversation. We were both really sad, but I knew for me that that's what I needed. And so I stepped back and I went on some dates with some different guys and met some different people and had some fun. And then he showed up on my door, like literally showed up on my door. He really did. Like, I opened the door and there he was. He had flown in and had realized, like, he did a lot of work on him to go, what do I want? And am I willing to set my fears down to be able to be fully present in this relationship? And so from there, we move forward. Yeah, go ahead.
I love that you were willing to walk away.
I was.
From the relationship that you wanted, had everything you wanted. It was the guy that you wanted. But when the relationship wasn't reflecting your value, you were willing to walk away. That is so hard for so many people.
Yep. And it was hard for me. It was.
I sometimes talk to women who are sometimes they'll date a guy and he's a nice guy. He's a good guy, but it's not a fit. They just have especially if they'd been with someone who was a jerk or who treated them badly before. It's like saying no to a good guy who isn't showing up the way you need him to show up can be so hard.
Yep.
That is huge. I just really wanted to highlight that. I have a similar story where my now husband and I broke up a while back. Well, I guess a year, 9 months after we met.
Okay.
And we were just having conflict that I was like, I said, we don't have the tools for this. We don't know how to resolve conflict well. And same thing. I was like, I don't think I can do this. And we were broken up for 10 days, I think.
I love it.
It wasn't very long. And I took that time to I asked myself, can I find the tools? Because I missed him and I loved him and I wanted to be with him, but not in that way. Yeah. And I just kind of went on this research rampage and I found a book where actually those are the marriage, Harville and Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt, we use their programs now for our marriage and to grow. And I found their book. I'd never used their book before. And I found their audiobook, listened to it. And I was like, this might help us. And so I was the one who reached out.
Awesome.
After being the one to break up. I was like, I think I found something that can help us. And then he had to forgive me for doing that. But it's so important because even if the person is amazing, we can't hurt ourselves again just because of a guy. You can't. I don't know what I'm struggling for the word for if you had just stayed in there because of who he was, even though the relationship wasn't progressing in a healthy way.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for me, what ended up like where I came to, because I was working on myself, I saw like very clearly what my, like, just like you talked about how we don't know how to deal with this conflict. I could see, I don't know how to deal with this and this and this. And I don't, and I got to work on myself. And I finally got to the point. I remember a particular moment where I felt completely free. I just felt free. I felt like I could get married if I wanted to. I could stay single if I wanted to. And I just felt free. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I got me, I'm good. I was feeling so peaceful. And it was very shortly thereafter that he showed up on my door.
Isn't that amazing how that works?
Well, do you want to know how soon thereafter? I remember the moment. I remember the moment. It was I apologize about that. It was the very next day. The next day. And I said nothing to him, right? I said nothing to him. I'm like, I'm good. I am good. And it was the next day that he showed up.
I love that miraculous aspect of the work that we do.
Yes, it's like magic. Huh?
It's like this. It's like, keep doing the work, keep growing, keep getting coached, keep going to therapy, keep getting in alignment with where you want to go and who you want to be. And it is just that moment where the miracle happens.
Yep. The things fall into place. You don't go chasing after it, right? Like it comes to you when you line up and like, remember your worth. And it doesn't, I love that you said it was 10 days for you, right? It doesn't have to, there's no timeline, right? There's no like magical timeline. It's more about alignment, right? It's less about time and more about alignment. And I think, I had to get there. I had to get to a place where I really knew that I did not need him to validate me, I didn't need him, but that when he did come, and when he, like, where I watched and I was like, is he really ready? Or is he just afraid of losing me? Right? Is he just afraid? And that was really, really important to me to see the difference. Is he just afraid of being alone or not having me around? And I remember feeling this really clear inner peace. It's okay. It's okay now.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. And we've been married for 5 years. We've worked through a lot, and, it's still, work, right? There's still things you have to work through. But we both were in a place where we were ready to commit fully to it, right? Saying, okay, I'm all in. We got married shortly thereafter. We were like, okay, we've been dating this long. Let's pull the trigger. Let's get married. And honestly, when I think about how far we've come, it blows my mind. It blows my mind how far we've come in 5 years. Like, it's amazing to me to see how much growth.
Yes. And I love that, because when you're in that healthy relationship, because I think that was one of the things that I saw in my first marriage, was like, there was such a lack of growth. Like, it was almost like anytime any little bit of growth was coming up in anyone's life, it was just like squashed by how toxic the environment was. And I look at my current relationship and how much growth we have and how much growth I have in this environment. So that's a sign, I think, of a healthy relationship that there's growth and forward motion.
Yeah, for sure. Can I add one thing to that real quick?
Oh, yeah.
I'll add that I think that one of the areas that can be pitfalls for us is where we, look at the people that we like, potential people to date or people that we are dating, and kind of judge, like, Are they growing? Are they working on themselves? Are they this? Are they that? And kind of holding it to our own standard of what we think it should look like. And something I've learned in my marriage is that it's less about, I mean, the way we grow, my husband and I, it's very different. I'm a coach, right? So I'm all into growth. I love growing. It's fun. It's fun to grow, right? I love it. And I love to read books and I love to study and he does not. That's not his thing. But here's where I have observed. As I grow and watch him, I extend the invitation to growth, right? And say, okay, this is where I'm going. Are you coming? Mm-hmm. And open and invite and have, that's where those conversations come in, where we have the conversations that open up our relationship to growth and honesty and more transparency. And I've watched him grow, right? And I've watched him grow in ways that are that have been really helpful to invite me to step into, right? Ways that he grows that are like, this is what matters to me. Are you willing to come here with me, right? And so just saying that, I think that we can be very prescriptive about what it needs to look like. And we can get ourselves in trouble.
Yes, that's true. I think as long as it's healthy and safe, there are certain, it's more about the quality.
Yes.
Versus, did we check the box?
100%.
We all checked the box the first time.
Right. Look where that got us.
Yes. Right. It's not about checking the box. It's about that real quality of relationship. So,
yes, exactly.
What is the most fun thing you and your husband do together?
Oh gosh, the most fun thing. We both love music, and particularly 80s music. And so we've been to some really fun concerts. We've been to like Def Leppard and Poison and U2. And we're going to REO Speedwagon like in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, they're like these old school bands, but we love to just like jam out. Like there's nothing better than cruising down the road, cranking the music, and we both just will sing our hearts out and look like idiots, I'm sure. Probably sound like it too, but it's just fun. We just have fun. So
that's beautiful.
Simple, fun, right?
It sounds simple, but it really is very telling about your level of connection.
Yeah.
It's the little inside jokes. It's the little thing, the things that are uniquely the two of you that make all the difference.
Yep, that's right. I agree. Yeah.
Andrea, thank you so much for sharing your story. Congratulations on the baby coming in a few months. Would you please tell the listeners again where they can find you, maybe spell out your website or your social media handles?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'm at AndreaGiles.com. It's GILES. I have a podcast of my own. It's called Heal from Infidelity. You can find that anywhere where you find podcasts. Instagram, Andrea Giles Coaching. And I think that's about it.
Awesome. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you. And I didn't mention to the listeners that, you and I are colleagues. We're in the same business mastermind. So for both of us, I think this has just been a really fun. We haven't really had a chance to have like this conversation, even though we've been in the same group for a year now.
Yeah.
6 months.
6 months. We're going on our next 6 months. So
yes. So I really have enjoyed this. I'm glad to have gotten this opportunity to connect with you. I know this has been so useful for divorced women who are dating. I know many of them are going to be checking out your podcast, those who've experienced infidelity. Thank you again. And
thank you.
Everyone, please check out Andrea's social media handles and her website. Everything will be linked up in the show notes. Thank you for your time and attention today, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to shadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.